Good evening and welcome to our final town hall of this academic year, which wrapped up just last Friday as we celebrated commencement for the class of 2021. I'd like to extend a special welcome to all of you who are celebrating a reunion tonight. We hope that you've enjoyed our virtual programming over the last couple of weeks, and we'll be sending a survey soon as we look to the future of a mix of in-person and virtual events. We'd love to get your thoughts and feedback on what worked as well as what hasn't. So, like all of you, Kenyon has some making up to do after 15 months away, including our super commencement weekend next May, where we will be celebrating both the class of 2022 as well as the class of 2020, followed by our mega reunion Memorial Day weekend. We're still workshopping those names, but suffice it to say that we know many of you are eager to return to the Hill, and we're eager to welcome you back. Tonight, we're going to take a moment to celebrate all of the creativity and dedication of our faculty and students that helped see us through this past year. And we'll also look ahead to the future with a few updates on our very robust incoming first year class. I'm Colleen Garland, I'm Vice President for Advancement, and I'm joined tonight by President Sean Decatur, our Provost, Jeff Bowman, as well as Camille Harless, class of 1999, and our President of the Alumni Council, to present Alumni Awards on her birthday, no less, and also our incoming Alumni Council President, Janae Peters, class of 2010. As a reminder, you are all on mute to enhance the audio quality for our guests, but we very much welcome your questions. If you have a question for any of our guests tonight, please submit them in the chat function to the submit question portion. We'll also get to as many of your questions as we can before we turn to the reunion portion of our programming that will include both alumni awards as well as breakout rooms where you'll spend some time with your classmates. Now, Sean, if I can turn to you, this has certainly been a year for the archives. So many new challenges for our community. And while of course we're aware that the pandemic isn't yet over, there's no doubt that things are improving, and we all hope that the worst is behind us. So I know that there were some pretty wonderful moments in this crazy year. So I'd love to have you start by sharing some lessons or some memories that you're going to take away from this year at Kenyon.
Thank you, Colleen. And first, let me also say welcome to all of the alums who've tuned in tonight. We are very grateful to have you participating in what we hope will be our last virtual reunion as we look forward to next year and beyond. So last week, we celebrated commencement on campus, and in many ways, this was a wonderful way to cap off what's been a very long and extraordinary academic year. There were some things about commencement this year that were certainly unusual. We held commencement in McBride Field to allow for more distancing, and also we restricted the number of guests who were able to attend in order to expand or to have more of a distance crowd, and the students were kind of spaced further apart than one might typically see in the commencement ceremony. On the other hand, there were many things about commencement that were quite familiar. Certainly the excitement and joy of the students and families, the tradition of students marching down the parallel aisles of faculty as they were approaching the stage. And I'd say because we had a fully vaccinated senior class, we were able to have not only an in-person ceremony, but an in-person ceremony that was outside mask optional for students. And so students were able to actually smile and be seen smiling as they were walking across stage, picking up their degree, which was really wonderful to be able to do. And certainly this has been a moment of reflection on all of the extraordinary accomplishments of the campus over the course of this past year. And it has been a year that would have been unimaginable a couple of years ago if we projected. We began the year with only half the typical number of students on campus, with only our first years and sophomores on campus in the fall. And then in the spring, only sophomores, juniors, and seniors on campus. We learned how to do remote teaching and learning. We learned how to do remote work and collaboration across campus. We learned how to run regular testing for coronavirus, and we're able to test all of our students on a regular basis on campus and get results back to them in a timely way. We learned how to run mass vaccination clinics on campus, and we were able to offer vaccination to all of our students and all of our employees. And by the end of the year, we had 90+% of our students on campus vaccinated and 80+% of our employees on campus vaccinated by the end of the year. We learned how to recruit a class of students with no in-person events, really, with only virtual events over the course of the year, and had a remarkable admission season despite the fact that it was an unusual season for campus. And we kind of learned how to do virtual alumni events and virtual events to support our campaign, and we reached our original campaign goal, despite actually the inability to have any in-person events for about a year before we reached that goal. So, when I look back, we did an amazing, this would have been an amazing year without the pandemic in terms of the things that we managed to accomplish. But in the context of doing all of this facing COVID, it was really, truly incredible. And I think the lasting piece that I'll take away from this is the way in which various parts of the Kenyon community came together. Our students were just remarkable over the course of the year in terms of their resilience. They made it through the year without any mid-semester breaks. And so if you all can imagine a spring semester without a spring break, that is basically what our students had this year. And we're truly amazing in the way that they navigated that. In terms of compliance with public health standards, to look out for each other and look out for the community. Again, our students were really outstanding on that front in terms of their performance on campus. And so, this is a year that was incredibly challenging, but a year that really just made me proud of all of the best things about Kenyon. I'm very glad it's over, but it was actually a year that we can say was a proud year for the Kenyon community.
Terrific. Thank you, Sean. Jeff, I'm sure you have some of your own special memories or comments about the past year. What would you like to share?
Thank you, Colleen. It's great to see you all, and welcome. Good to see you at this virtual event. I would say a couple of things. Like, one of the things I note is that at the commencement ceremony, one of the things that I was able to do, or was my kind of privilege and prerogative, was kind of announcing the people who've been awarded honorary degrees as retiring faculty members. And that might be something that's kind of interesting to a bunch of the people on the screen, just so you know. So we awarded honorary degrees to a cluster of retiring faculty members who collectively had served the college for more than 270 years. So that is a lot of service to the college, and these are a lot of inspiring teachers who have really left their mark in a lot of different ways, not just in terms of the effect that they've had on individual students, but also in terms of like programs that they have built at Kenyon. And so I just want to say their names before I do something more general. And the people who we honored with honorary degrees were Harry Itagaki, who's a professor of biology, Bob Mock, a professor of biology, Janet McAdams, who was the Hubbard Chair in Poetry in the English department, Clara Roman Odio, a professor of Spanish, Peter Rutkoff in American Studies, Ed Shortman, the Smale Professor of Anthropology, Ellen Sheffield in Art, and Greg Spade in Art. And I mean, it's a wonderful thing at commencement. I mean, Sean spoke a little bit about this. It's a wonderful thing at commencement to be able to see everyone's face again, but it's great to be able to see these students who have been there for 4 years achieving their degrees at the same time that you're looking at faculty members who have served the institution for decades or more. So that's kind of a highlight. I'd say a couple of other things about my impressions about the year and my feeling of what the faculty and the students have have achieved. And I think some of these would probably echo some of what Sean said. So I suppose there's good news and that the provost and the president agree about things at the college, right? It was just really, it was a really inspiring year in a lot of ways. I mean, students and faculty alike are tired because it was really hard, just as it's been really hard everywhere. But I think they're also kind of excited at the successes of the year and at what we've learned in some kind of technical senses about different ways that we can enhance pedagogy, different ways that we can achieve remote learning, but also sort of what we've learned about ourselves in terms of our adaptability and our resilience and our creativity. And so it was like a hard year, but the faculty and the students rose to the occasion, like in terms of their energy and their dedication and their mutual generosity in a way that was really inspiring. We've had to adapt in a year like no other, and we did it. So we're all really eager to go back to the kind of intimate, in-person, face-to-face kinds of classroom environments that we've are accustomed to and that are really important here. But we've also learned some lessons. We've also got some new arrows in the quiver that will enable us to do other things in the future. And I guess I'll say, this is my first year as provost of the college, and I've just never felt prouder of Kenyon faculty and staff and students in the way that they have risen to the challenges that have been put in front of us. And so people, I think, feel really tired and kind of really good, or really we should be really proud about what we've done over the past 15 months. So I'm happy to be able to share that with you all. So.
Thank you, Jeff. What a year to start your service as provost. So we appreciate that. Just a quick reminder to our guests, if you could go in and change your names to add your class year, if you haven't done that already, that will help assist us as we move you into breakout rooms later with your class. So quick reminder about that. In addition to some of the bright spots that, of course, Sean and Jeff have already shared, we also have really exciting progress on the new Chalmers Library, which will open later this fall. Some of you were able to join us for a sneak peek that we held just last week. And so I'd like to take just a few moments to play this brief video that we were able to put together with a few students before they left for the summer. So Lindsay, could you share the video for us, please?
Excellent. Is it recording?
I think so.
No, squeeze in, squeeze in. Here we go. This is cool. Oh my God. This is actually insane.
So, hello, we are currently in the main atrium space. As you can see, kind of lining the wall along the ceiling, we have these stained glass panels.
Okay, so this is the quiet study room. I guess we come here to just do some quiet reading.
Just picture yourself quietly studying for a test in here. It sounds so peaceful, right?
You said that this is the CDO? Correct. Yep. Okay.
Okay, Grant. I'm really excited to have stacks because it's like the quintessential library thing.
Yes, check it out.
So this is the Center for Student Accessibility, and the common area is open 24/7.
Yeah, you can see whatever's going on Middle Park. You can see your friends walking on Middle Park.
Yeah.
You can see so much.
It's very cool.
So right now we're looking at the new writing center. There's a ton of different rooms with big whiteboards, and there's a touchscreen scheduling thing right in front where it says when the room is busy, when the room is free, and then I think around the around the library what other rooms are open. So that is very cool.
This will be a green room. A nice big patio out here. Patios on each one of the buildings, and then green room.
Well, it's pretty spectacular. So Jeff, can I turn to you perhaps again to channel the excitement of our librarians, our CDO staff, our faculty who will get to teach there. Tell us a little bit about what you're hearing about the excitement on campus.
Yeah, I mean, as you will have seen from that video, I mean, it's like a beautiful building with all kinds of different spaces, from really like the kind of vast and glorious and open to like much more intimate spaces for kind of cozy reading, lots of like bookable collaborative spaces in all sorts of configurations. And so it's going to be a very extremely adaptable building for all kinds of different uses. And so people are getting really excited about it. I mean, not just because it looks great, but because there are lots of different things in it that are going to be very useful. There are a few different classrooms in it that are of different kinds of interest. There's a big immersive classroom that is filled with all sorts of complicated technology that will enable you to sort of, with projections on the walls, inhabit a medieval cathedral if that's what you want to inhabit, or if you would rather inhabit the coronavirus and walk around inside it, if that's your cup of tea, you'll be able to do that too. So really kind of very technologically sophisticated spaces, but also other kinds of instructional spaces that are a little bit more analog. There's a new special lovely classroom in the special collections and archives room, where like faculty who rely on manuscripts and things in the archives will be able to teach in a much better space than they've been used to. And then the other thing that I think folks are excited about, and that I'm excited about, is part of the program of services that face students. So there'll be a bunch of offices in the library that are things that really help students get oriented in different ways. So the registrar will be there, the Dean of Academic Advising, the Student Accessibility and Support Services, and the Career Development Office. So this is going to be a great, glorious building with the main collection of the library and a bunch of classrooms, but it's also going to be a kind of place where students can kind of rapidly go and get the kind of attention and responses they need for other kinds of questions. And then the last thing I'd mention about this is that these a lot of these beautiful reading rooms are going to have kind of micro collections curated by different departments and programs. And so there'll be lots of spaces that will be oriented toward allowing you to kind of collaborate on projects with other students or faculty members, but there'll also be these kind of rooms that are meant to be places where you can go and just sort of browse and kind of poke around and engage with physical books and really nice chairs with beautiful views out over the campus. So it's an exciting building, and I mean, I think people are really eager to get into it for all kinds of different reasons. So we're looking forward to it. Come back and see it as soon as you can.
Exactly. That's what I was just thinking. So I suspect many of our guests are eager to get in and see it too. So for those who don't want to wait until the spring for reunion, we do anticipate being able to host guests on campus this fall for homecoming. So mark your calendars. We'd love to have you back on campus in September. I'll also note briefly that we also have a very exciting new major work by renowned sculptor Richard Serra that will be installed in the West Quad in just less than a month. So that is another real point of pride for the college, and you'll be hearing a lot more about that. One of our guests just pointed out to me that I asked you to add your names to your images, and I didn't explain how to do that. So quickly, if you don't know how to do that, if you go to your little square and hover over the 3 dots, you'll find something that says rename, and you can go in there and just add your class year to your name. So if you have difficulty, we can put those instructions back in the chat again as well. So thank you for that. Sean mentioned a little bit earlier about the just incredible news we had with the incoming class that was required to recruit with virtually no visits to campus, which is usually, of course, one of our strongest selling points. So not only did we meet our goals, we exceeded them, and I mean really exceeded them, which is pretty exciting. But this record-breaking class also has some required some creativity. And Jeff, I'm going to turn to you, and then maybe Sean can follow you. But I understand the capital city of Denmark has something to do with this. So could you describe a little bit how we are planning for the fall, particularly in a fall where we will likely be accommodating a greater number of students than in the past?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is, as Colleen says, this is really exciting news. It's a year where there's a lot of unpredictability, and this is another place where Kenyon did really well. I mean, the fact that we have so many students who are eager to join us in Gambier is a sign of the great respect and the reputation of the college among like prospective students and their families, and that's really exciting. It's great to see, in particularly a moment that's very volatile in higher education. It does pose some kind of challenges for us in terms of capacity, and so we've been trying to figure out what will work best for members of this very large class of 2025 and other classes. And we've been thinking about this in a bunch of different ways. So we have, of course, been increasing staffing in all sorts of places that will meet needs where we think that there's likely to be needs for additional sections of statistics or quest for justice or whatever else. And then we've also tried to think a little bit more creatively about what might be alternative ways of starting a Kenyon career. And we've come up with one kind of bold and audacious experiment, which is a partnership that we built with DIS, which is an off-campus service provider for off-campus study in both Copenhagen and in Sweden, in Stockholm. And we've had a relationship with them for decades. It's one of the places that we send more off-campus students than any other off-campus provider. There are a few reasons for that. I mean, one of them is that they're very academically rigorous. They have a much more a curriculum that's much more kind of in the spirit of liberal arts education, so it's much more aligned with what we do at Kenyon. And they have a really, really robust support network for their students. So it's a little bit more like a highly selective liberal arts college in Copenhagen than most off-campus programs. And so one of the things that we're going to do is try a program where we have members of the class of 2025 start their Kenyon careers in Copenhagen with a couple of members, or maybe two, maybe three members of the Kenyon faculty. The resident directors who will be going with them will be Sergei Labano-Rostovsky and Sarah Height, both members of the English faculty who have led the Kenyon Exeter program a bunch of times before. And then we'll work with our partners at DIS to kind of craft a bunch of courses that will kind of align neatly with the Kenyon curriculum, but also really build on this location in a different place. They've got really strong course offerings in things like environmental studies and in design and public policy and planning. And so we will build a kind of set of courses that are great courses for first-year students, and have a cohort that, rather than beginning in Gambier, will begin their Kenyon careers in Copenhagen. We're still trying to work out how we do the SING, whether we do the SING at a pre-orientation in Washington, or whether we send Doc Locke to Denmark to do the SING there. We're working on how the details of that go, but it's a very exciting and interesting plan, and it kind of builds on thoughts that the faculty have about cultivating a real sense of global engagement on the part of our students. So it's kind of long-standing strengths that we can jumpstart in the first year. And we had an information session last year for students and parents of the class of 2025, and there were about 100 folks there. So there seems to be very keen interest in it. So we're doing some of this response in a kind of typical way of adding additional staffing in places where we think we need it, but we're also trying kind of really exciting experiment about what it means to start a Kenyon education.
Sean, I suspect you have some additional thoughts about what this kind of success means for Kenyon.
Yes, this is a pretty stunning outcome of the admissions year, given not only the uncertainties of the pandemic, but the uncertainties around what virtual recruitment of students looks like. This is we admitted comparable numbers of students that we have in recent years, but we yielded many more of them. So it is actually a good sign that the students who applied to Kenyon and the students that were admitted actually loved the place more this year than they have in the past in terms of their interest and excitement about coming, which is really thrilling to see. And it is particularly good to see in the context of other institutions that are having actually quite challenging years on the enrollment front. And so to be in a position of strength and a position of strength coming out of an unusually difficult year is just wonderful to see, and gives me a great deal of enthusiasm about what the coming year holds for us.
Thank you, Sean. We will certainly continue to update our audience as those things unfold. We don't have time, unfortunately, tonight to go into details, but we do want to let you know that the strategic planning process is underway. It's nearing conclusion. Over the past year, we've had an outstanding group of trustees, faculty, staff, students who've been working on developing Kenyon's next strategic plan and looking at what the external pressures are that we're facing and really imagine a vision for Kenyon's third century. It will establish our priorities, and it will guide the way the college allocates resources and really govern our institutional decision making. So at our town hall in the fall, we know that Sean will be back to share a fair amount of detail with you about that plan for the future. So before we get to your questions, I am very excited to announce the winners of our virtual reunion bingo competition. So thanks to those of you who played along at home. We hope it made you feel a little bit more connected to campus, and that you caught Sean's Springsteen reference in the opening ceremony. So our winners are Stephanie Hill, class of '96, Abil Hammonds, 01, Elise Spenceley, 01, Brandy Mays Wagner, 96, Jan Richardson, 82, Dorothy Leonard, 81, Megan Pache, 13, Elizabeth Bell Townsend, 90. And a very special shout out to Victoria Lederer, class of 2011, for attending the most virtual events during our reunion. We will email the winners the blankets very soon. The center square on our bingo card was to make a gift to our Kenyon Together 36-hour giving challenge that we had just last week to support the annual fund. These are central to everything that we do at Kenyon in terms of our support for students. So I'd like to thank you and everyone on the screen who gave to Kenyon Together. More than 1,300 alumni, parents, friends, and even some students participated. These gifts touch all aspects of life on the Hill, and they were even more critical in this challenging year. So our fiscal year ends on June 30th. If for some reason you have not gotten around to a gift this year, we encourage you to go online and give a gift of any size. We appreciate that very much. So now on to your questions. A reminder, if you have a question for President Decatur or Provost Bowman, please send it in the chat to submit question and add your class year if you have not done that already. So our first question comes from Murray Smith, class of 75, and he would like to know if the college has received many communications from prospective students or families about the Case Walk and student union organizing efforts during our admissions year. And did we see any impact? Sean?
And first, I should probably just take a moment to back up a bit and to just remind folks of the context of what is Case Walk. So back at the beginning of this academic year in August, a group of students sort of were organizing and are continue to organize and advocate for the creation of a labor union on campus that would be a union directed at student workers on campus. There is no model for this on any college campus, and it would be the only undergraduate student worker union. The college actually studied this issue. There was a board of trustee committee that took a close look at these issues in the fall, heard feedback from many constituencies on campus, and reached the conclusion that the college would not voluntarily recognize a student union, that the type of the role and relationship between students in the college is one that's based on students as learners, as opposed to students in the capacity of laborers as their primary focus. At the same time, we also took a very close look. Campus Senate last year took a review of issues surrounding student work on campus and ways in which we could be more supportive, especially more financially supportive of students. As a result, we've made some changes to campus work study beginning next year in reducing the total expectation of work study that's packaged, that students are packaged with as part of their financial aid package, which reduces the number of hours that students have to work. One of the things we did hear as feedback is that many students were in a position where they were working large numbers of hours that were actually distracting from their academic work and their ability to participate fully in campus. And so by replacing some of that with a grant, it reduces the number of hours that students have to work, and actually, I think, will improve the overall academic experience as well as the financial support for students. We have not received negative comments or feedback from prospective students in this admission cycle. In fact, it was as we've been discussing, a very strong admission cycle. I suspect that prospective students appreciate the passion and commitment that current students have for making Kenyon a better place, and that passion is something that actually was well received by at least some students who were applying to Kenyon.
Terrific. I'm going to stick with you, Sean, because it looks like the next couple will come your way. So Maggie Schmidt, 06, asks a question about the possible change to the Lords and Ladies names. And she would like to know specifically if alumni will be consulted or involved in the process going forward.
Sure. And this was another issue that Campus Senate took up this year. Campus Senate was quite busy. And as a reminder, Campus Senate is made up of elected students, faculty, and staff. One of the topics that had been brought to Campus Senate by students was the larger question of what's the role of a moniker on campus, and what is a process for consideration or reconsideration of monikers on campus. I agreed that that larger frame was something that was appropriate for Campus Senate to take up. So not a firm decision about whether the moniker should be changed or not, but Campus Senate sort of investigating what are the issues involved, what's the history of the Lord and Ladies, what are the views of current students on campus in terms of what they value about any moniker, especially the current ones. Coming out of that, Senate did recommend a process for next year to take a closer look and specifically at the question of lords and ladies. And I'll say as part of their recommendation was that this needed to be, before any decision is made, there needs to be broad consultation of all constituencies at Kenyon, including alumni. So stay tuned next year for more information that'll come from Campus Senate on that front, as they do reach out to collect opinions and perspectives from across constituencies on about this. But no decision has been made yet, and no specifics on process have been made yet either.
Very helpful. Thank you, Sean. We'll stick with a couple of the hot button issues. Matt Colburn, class of 2010, would like to know about Middle Path and if it will be paved to make the college more accessible.
Yeah, and so right before, so literally I think the 2 weeks before COVID hit, because I remember this pretty clearly because it was right before spring break, there was a first meeting of kind of students, faculty, and actually alumni, some alumni who are faculty and staff, to talk about Middle Path and to begin a process of looking at what some alternatives are that could make Middle Path more accessible, especially more accessible during the winter months. And those alternatives include materials or work that could be done to improve drainage and to generally what could be done to improve the surface. Then we sent folks home for spring break and they never came back. And during the course of this past year, management, including actually some of the strain on facilities of managing our way through COVID, was really the top thing on our agenda. So as we look to next year, we will be reconvening that group of students, faculty, staff, and alumni to start that conversation again, hopefully on a bit of an accelerated timetable. But again, that's another thing to look forward to in the fall.
Great, thank you, Sean. We'll give you a breather. And Jeff, the next question I'll direct to you. Rebecca Shute, class of 06, is asking about which academic departments are moving to the library. So it might be helpful for you to describe, of course, not the academic departments, but the departments. And perhaps you'll like to say a few words about the new academic building, which is a little bit later in the West Quad progress. So Jeff, over to you.
Thanks, Colleen. Yeah, sure, I'm happy to talk about that. So in terms of departments, I mean, there are departments within the academic division, that several of them that I mentioned, that will be moving into the library, but they won't be the kind of academic departments like English or history or political science. As I said, there are things like the career development office and academic advising. But the library itself is, of course, part of a bigger project, the West Quad project, that includes not just the library, but two other significant buildings. One of them oriented around enrollment and admissions, an administration building, and then the other one, an academic building. And the academic building will form like one side of this quad, and it will probably be completed the middle of next year, the summer of 2022. And that building will be basically home to a bunch of humanistic social sciences. So it's meant to be a place where lots of departments that have kind of interdisciplinary connections can build those connections further rather than being separated in different places. So right now, it looks like the inhabitants of the new academic building will be history, philosophy, political science, sociology, the Center for the Study of American Democracy, and my apologies to whomever I've forgotten, but that's basically the array of it. And that building will have a large auditorium in the basement. It'll have a bunch of classrooms on the first floor, kind of largest classrooms, including one that's kind of designed specifically for anthropology. So there's a kind of lab connected to it. And then there are 3 floors above that that will have both faculty offices and a smaller seminar room. So total, there'll be about 50 faculty that will move in there probably in about 15 months from now. So that's another exciting piece of the puzzle. And eventually, the fourth side of that quad is Sunset Cottage, which will be renovated, and that will be the new home of the anthropology department.
Terrific. Thank you, Jeff. Sean, I'll turn back to you. Our next question is from Bruce Kennedy, class of 59, who's asking if Kenyon has plans to hold an in-depth study into its historic involvement with race relations, specifically the role that Rutherford B. Hayes may have played in the country's reconstruction of the South. So, Sean?
Yes, and actually this is a timely question on a number of fronts. There have been conversations not only on campus among students and faculty and staff, but actually among a group of some colleges similar to Kenyon, colleges in the Episcopal tradition, that have had kind of broader conversations about how we understand our institutional histories and legacies with respect to race and systemic racism in the US. And one of the questions that does come up is kind of understanding the legacy of Rutherford B. Hayes. I should say, in full disclosure, I am a member of the board of the Rutherford B. Hayes Presidential Center. And so at the risk of boring you with more biographical detail than you may ever want about Rutherford B. Hayes, this is actually a topic which I've been immersed in quite a bit. And Hayes is an interesting and complex figure. Certainly the simplified textbook story is focuses on his role in removing troops from the South, which leads to the end of Reconstruction, which leads to the institution of Jim Crow, and really a century of suppression of civil rights of Blacks in the South. The complexity, though, of this and Hayes is that it's actually not clear that there was a direct quid pro quo in terms of Hayes's decision. And of course, the mood of the country at the time meant that inevitably there was momentum towards an end of Reconstruction in either case. But if you dig deeper into Hayes, I mean, some of the complexities are fascinating. He fought in the Civil War for the Union, was gravely wounded, came from a family that was a very pro-abolitionist family. And in fact, his mother was on record not sure she wanted him to go to Kenyon because she wasn't sure it was abolitionist enough. She had her heart on him going actually north to Oberlin, believe it or not, but he chose to come to Kenyon. And then after the presidency has on the one hand, a strong personal commitment to education of African Americans. He leads a funding effort for scholarships and HBCUs throughout the country. Yet on the other hand, a sort of troubling paternalistic view in this support for education that is captured in a really fascinating exchange of letters he had with W.E.B. Du Bois in the 1890s. All of this goes to say that actually one of the things we've been talking about on campus is that the story of Hayes and the fact that actually there are no simple winners, losers, kind of good, bad, when you look at the history of American race dynamics, especially in the 19th century and the history of systemic racism, that Hayes is a good example of someone who's just complex and human, that there are many things where he was clearly on what history would show is kind of the good side of things, and his performance in the Civil War is incredibly admirable. There are many decisions he made which are questionable and that are attitudes that are reflective of his time. And that we as a campus need to make sure that we find ways to talk about that complexity in terms of what it means for understanding our own complexity with respect to issues, not only issues of race, but broader issues surrounding justice. And so in collaboration with some of our peer institutions in the Episcopal College Network, we're going to be doing in the next year or so, a education effort to talk about how we unravel or look at some of these complex issues. So, sorry, that was more about Rutherford B. Hayes than any of you were really actually aiming to hear about tonight, but it is a fascinating story.
Well, and we all learned something. So thank you for your very thoughtful response to that good question. Appreciate that, Sean. We have a couple more in the queue. Let me go back to you, Jeff. Brad Hughes, class of 77, would like to hear a little bit about how faculty recruiting went this year, particularly in a year when he presumes our finalists for positions were not able to come to campus in person.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to talk about that, and I'll say something firstly, sort of about how we manage this logistically or technically, and then I'll say something about how we did basically. So as you may know, in terms of the process of faculty recruiting, typically the longstanding way of doing this has been that you interview a kind of short list of 10 or 12 candidates at a convention somewhere that is a professional convention, the MLA or the American Historical Society or something like that. And then you identify a few candidates to bring to campus for a 2-day intensive kind of finalist interview thing where they meet a bunch of students, they give a research presentation, they give a teaching presentation, and all of those things were disrupted not just by the pandemic, but also because over recent years, people have been kind of rethinking the model of making graduate students travel at considerable expense to these conferences where there aren't a lot of actual prospects. And so, it's kind of a place that's actually sort of rife for disruption already. And then the pandemic made it sort of impossible. So we had to do a bunch of thinking about how do we do all those things in the interviews without actually being able to bring people to campus for these very high touch events where there's lots of social interaction, there's lots of meeting with students and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of ingenuity involved in that. Almost all of them were done entirely remotely, but we tended to then offer opportunities for the people that we offer jobs to come to campus to at least see it, even if they couldn't interact with students. I mean, I don't have to tell people on this screen that it's a place that kind of sells, and there's part of it where we are recruiting and screening and identifying the best candidate, but then there's part of it where we are also wooing. We are trying to get people to really want to be here and be excited about the community, and that's harder to do without bringing them here for that kind of visit. So departments were pretty kind of agile and thoughtful about the ways that they did this. So they tried to come up with virtual alternatives to the normal dinner at the Kenyon Inn or at the Alcove. So they would have things on the screen, but they would all have sent the finalists cookies or cupcakes or Kenyon mugs or whatever it was. So everybody could kind of be in the same place having a kind of a virtual event. So the good news is that we did 7 or 8 tenure track searches this year, and in all of them but one, we hired our top candidate. And so a couple of the departments that were scheduled to do searches this year elected to postpone them until next year when they thought the search environment would be a little bit more normal. But we wanted people to kind of march on, and we also knew that given the environment more generally, that there are ways in which we were likely to get very large applicant pools for tenure track positions because it's a very competitive place. And so it's exciting. We got the people that we wanted for these positions. So there are a couple in English, a couple in history, one in psychology, a position in Arabic, and a position in art history that we all hired to tenure track positions. So.
Jeff, while we're on that topic, we have a follow-up question from someone who's curious about the diversity of the new hires. So could you say another word or two about that?
Yeah, that yes, I mean, there's both a bunch of curricular diversity in terms of the kind of range of things that they represent, and that's kind of intentional. We've been nudging in that direction. Let me think a little bit about this, but I can say pretty confidently that we reached a bunch of goals in terms of embodied diversity as well as curricular diversity too. So, so these are people that are really bringing a lot in terms of their teaching experience and in terms of what they bring to the curriculum and in terms of bringing new perspectives. So we were happy with our pools in every possible way.
Yeah, terrific. Thank you. Sean, let me pose this last question to you, and it's one I think that you will enjoy. Bob Strong, class of 1970, says, if colleges were ranked by the ratio of reputation to resources, would Kenyon be the best college in the country?
Yeah, so this is a fascinating question because I have moments of either kind of late night, way too many things on my mind, and the ability to play with Excel and plotting things out. I've actually done this in a way. So if you take on the, if you make a plot of US News ranking, which is a rough, very rough, but at least a somewhat rough measure of reputation, and you plot that against endowment, right? Generally, one of the things you find is that there's actually pretty much a straight line, right? That the schools that have the highest US News ranking and therefore the highest reputation are the schools with multi-billion-dollar endowments, right? So, so there's a pretty strong correlation there, with a few key exceptions, and Kenyon is one of them. So Kenyon turns out to be way off the line, and off the line in terms of higher, much higher in reputation than that correlation with endowment would predict, right? So if you look, most of the schools are on the line. Kenyon is an outlier in terms of being high in reputation, but still relatively low in endowment compared to our peers. So it's kind of consistent with, you know, it's a quantitative way or a way to visualize what I think we all know, that we're a school that tends to punch above our weight. We're a school that actually has done remarkably well, but we're also a school that has to be attentive to building our endowment resources because it's our endowment, we're competing against the billion-dollar schools. And so, you know, if we want to keep competing against the billion-dollar schools, we need to build, be attentive to our endowment. One little thing, at the risk of being snarky, but this is a reunion, so what's a reunion without a little bit of snarkiness? There are some schools that are below the line, which means that actually they perform much lower in terms of reputation than their endowments would predict. And I'll maybe just leave it that there is an Ohio school that is a little bit to the south of us by about a 30-minute or so drive that has a reputation that is below the line in terms of a larger endowment, but a lower ranking. So we should be very proud of where Kenyon stands.
I love it. Thank you, Sean. For those who don't know, our president is deeply competitive, and sometimes that comes out, not often. So unfortunately, we are out of time for your questions this evening. I do want to thank all of you who both submitted questions as well as participated in this first portion of our event. Thanks especially to you, Jeff, for joining us. I hope that you're able to enjoy some downtime to recharge over the summer as we look to a more normal fall. So now it's time to turn to the reunion portion of our evening. And Sean, may I ask you to do the honors?
Sure. So yes, so welcome to this really quite unusual reunion. You know, unusual in terms of format, in that we are doing this virtually, and also unusual in that we have doubled up in terms of the folks here. So welcome to the ones, the sixes, the zeros, and the fives. We are just really delighted to have you here. We will have class dinners starting in about 5 minutes. And so, you know, these will replicate at least a little bit the type of experience that you have when you have a chance to gather in a small group and connect with friends and peers in your class. I'd like to give a special shout out to the classes of 15 and 16 that recognizing this is your first reunion, and we hope to see you again in 5, 10, 15 plus years down the road. If you think this is exciting, wait until you actually experience it in person, where it is even more thrilling. And of course, I'd also like to give a special welcome to the classes of 70 and 71 who are celebrating their 50th reunions here tonight. And the 50th is quite the landmark, and we're really glad to have those of you who've logged in tonight join us to celebrate. And so please celebrate, connect. It's virtual, but actually the connections and the friendship are very much real. And so thank you for joining us.
And as Sean said, while every union is important, the 50th is something special. We have a new position and advancement that we created working directly with our 50th classes in preparation for their reunion. And I want to recognize especially Mike Epstein from the class of 1995, who has created a lovely handcrafted baton that will be the anchor of a new 50th reunion tradition, passing it from one class to the next each year. So we look forward to doing that in person next May. Next, I would like to welcome Camille Harless, class of 1996, to present 4 of our alumni awards. Camille.
Thank you, Colleen. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see you all. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to recognize some groups and folks who have just done some great things as they have left the Hill. So the first award that I want to give is the Bishop's Cup. The Bishop's Cup recognizes the reunion class who contributes the largest amount to all purposes. For the 2020 reunions, we're pleased to celebrate the class of 1970 with more than $7.3 million contributed as part of their 50th reunion. For the 2021 reunions, the class of 1971 takes home the honor with more than $4.8 million contributed to all purposes. So thank you all. What an amazing investment in Kenyon students and our future. Our next award is the Humanitarian Service Award, and it is presented to the member of the Kenyon family who has demonstrated a lifelong commitment to humanitarian service. This year's recipient graduated from Kenyon in 1991 before entering Yale School of Medicine. She completed her pediatric residency at Columbia University, then after time in private practice, pursued a master's in public health at Columbia's Mailman School. Following a role as the sole pediatrician in New York City's largest and highest security juvenile detention center in the Bronx, she accepted a position at a New York City clinic, providing care for children in need, including the homeless, the abused, and undocumented, some of whom had never before seen a physician. Her husband, also a member of the class of 1991, noted in her nomination that she is the true definition of a humanitarian, someone with the skills and training to do anything, but who chooses to help others in the best way they know how. It is for these reasons and more that we present the 2021 Humanitarian Service Award to Dr. Bridget Kirpsack Olson. Lastly, we are pleased to present the Grad Cup, the college's highest alumni honor. Donated to Kenyon by Henry Sellers Gregg of the class of 1881 to recognize academic year service to the college, it is now presented in recognition of lifelong service. This year's recipient of the class of 1971 went on to earn his JD from Georgetown University in 1974, then practiced real estate and land use law. Over the last 40 years, he has served the college in multiple volunteer capacities, including on the Kenyon Fund Executive Committee, Alumni Council, as a trustee, and currently on the board of directors for the Philander Chase Conservancy. On behalf of the members of Alumni Council and the college, I'm pleased to present this year's Grad Cup to Richard Alper. All righty. So now it's time for another ceremony that would work much better in person, and it is my final official act as president of Alumni Council. So now I have the opportunity to pass the gavel to the person who has provided me with great counsel during my 2 years as Alumni Council president. Congratulations to my friend and incoming Alumni Council president, Janae Peters of the class of 2010.
Thank you, Camille, and happy birthday.
Thank you.
Here's the gavel for anyone who wants to see it. It's a beautiful little piece of power. And
yes, it makes you feel very powerful.
Yes. So it's not lost on me that I'll be stepping into some pretty big shoes in my role as Alumni Council president. Camille's dedication to getting Alumni Council on more folks' radars and commitment to engaging with Kenyon folks from many walks of life and experiences has been admirable to witness as her vice president. There are also the shoes of James Greenwood, Susan Berger, Cindy Sternberg-Thomas, and Ellen Turner, who were among past Alumni Council presidents who came before her, and who I know firsthand their love for and commitment to Kenyon and her people. So big shoes to fill indeed, and it's a good thing. I love a good challenge. I'm very eager to continue many of the efforts initiated by Camille and James, and to be thinking with Alumni Council about what it means for us to support this place that meant so much to so many of us, and also what it means for us to support each other as the Kenyon alumni family. Thank you, Camille, and now I'm passing things back to Colleen.
Thank you, Janae, and thank you, Camille. So much of the work both of you do for Kenyon is behind the scenes, but every alum here tonight should know what powerful advocates you are for this place and for our students today. Thanks also to Sean and everyone for joining us tonight. If you're sticking around for your class dinners, please don't log off. Stay on the screen, even if you need to step away for a brief break. Our staff will be assigning you to breakout rooms by class. But once you get in there, you can switch around and go from class to class. So you'll have an opportunity to reconnect with as many folks on the screen as you'd like. So again, thank you all for joining us this evening, and enjoy the rest of the festivities. Good night.